Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and today I get to interview Brian. So, Brian, welcome, dude.
Good to see you, Kendrick. Seen a lot of your work. Thanks for all you do.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Um, all right. Can you tell us what your type is, please?
All right. They shaved me as an ESTJ, so TESI, blast, play, consume, sleep, last, and the modalities are MF.
All right. And what did you think, and how did you feel when you got your results back?
Oh boy. Okay, beware. There might be a little blast here. Uh, I uh, I was surprised and not surprised. I had been tipped off by some folks that I was probably going to come in as an STJ. So where I thought, I had a lot of people in the community. 32 people had taken a guess at me. About 26 of them, I think, had been previously shaved. So some reasonable experience there. And they were all over the map. Uh, Only about 4 people guessed STJ in the whole set, maybe 5. But the ones that did were pretty vocal that it was pretty apparent. So they kind of warned me to be ready for that. So what I thought was, okay, I've been warned. Here I am. I was assessed back in my 20s, so roughly 3 decades ago as an ENTJ. And so I've been an ENTJ all this time, and I'm in love with NI. So I was like, okay, I'm SI now. So this is going to take some getting used to. I might have to do some serious processing. So my thinking there was the 32 people I made reference, all 32 said I was a thinker. So when you ask me how I think, well, that comes pretty naturally to me. When you ask me how I feel, though, I'm going to tell you a little story. Throughout my life, people said, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Well, a thinker, when you ask them, how do you feel about something, they don't know how to answer that because you reciprocate with, you mean, how do I think about that, right? Because feeling is kind of a foreign thing to us, especially an EJ with baby FI, as I call it. So I felt a little curious. I felt a little pissed off because I loved my NI and I loved my ENTJ status, despite the tip-offs I got. But I felt leaned into it. I felt curious and compelled to let's figure out what this is all about and figure out how I can own this and make the most of it.
Gotcha. All right. So ENTJ is not far from your type, so it's pretty close. The same problem, both types, right, with the FI at the bottom. And intuition. Well, you're double activated extrovert intuition, so it's pretty close also. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like very far off. So I think that's pretty good assessment that what you got, like being ENTJ, you know. Because it would mean like the problem that you would still need to work with is still the same. It's still FI, so it's still the same thing, pretty much. Um, let's go over your animals. Let's start with ST. This is your first animal. So we're both part of the same quadra. Okay, I'm an ENFP, you're an ESTJ, so we're in the same quadra. The difference though is I'm play first, you're blast first. And I did
Right.
notice you being blast first, you are more controlling than I am. Okay, and number two, um, when you're more focused when you talk, you're not like all over the place because when you have a high play, you're scattered. But when you're blast first, you're focused. So I want to talk about ST blast. Being very focused when giving people the facts, and giving people like directions, step by step, because it's SI. Step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this. Can you talk about that a little bit and how you personally do that and whatnot?
Sure. When you say step by steps and all those things, I worked in the space program. Everything was procedures and flow process panel and organize this, organize that, and you had to be very effective and efficient. And I think ST Blast kind of was at play all along for me, so to speak, keeping things to a point, like you're saying. But a little bit about that is I had some folks tell me, when I was like, I'm not quite sure they got me right. And they're like, a few variety of people from the tribe that kind of confirmed it. They're like, one said, oh, it's completely obvious. Just get over it. Another one said it triggered her because she saw herself in it. And so it triggered her how much she was that way as well. And somebody else said it was soothing to them. And a few people gave me that feedback, and it made me feel pretty good. So in terms of what it's all about, yeah, It's necking things down, listing things, proceduralizing. I draw frameworks. And really what I call myself a waycrafter. When I'm coordinating, when I'm leading, when I'm coaching, when I'm mentoring, whatever I'm doing, it's all about going to a point. That's that SI, narrowing down, coming from the past with facts. And then that coordinating, that TE, effective and efficiency and project management to get it to a single point. So it's kind of how my life is. I think the space program wired me that way, or I was wired that way to go into there, and I just happened to fit in my leadership roles. It served me really well. And so the blast part of it is, I don't know. It's just when I talk, things consolidate and they become efficient, more so than when I'm not talking. So the blasting just kind of, it's really weird. It's like there's a bunch of little blast nuggets out there, so to speak. And then my propensity is just to kind of integrate them and streamline them into something that people call ST clear.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. That means you're a clear communicator. People are not gonna second guess what you're saying. Like, they know exactly what you mean. I do want to ask you about your feminine extrovert thinking. So even though you are a blaster, your extrovert thinking is feminine. So does that mean you're pretty flexible with the tribe? If they want to do it in a different way, you're like, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. That's not a big deal. Like, how do you see yourself in terms of like, doing that kind of stuff?
Well, okay, so I can look past some of my leadership roles. I used to chair this big meeting with a lot of people, a lot of things at stake, and I got comments after I left that job from folks about how I tend to vacillate between being kind of stern and decisive, and this is the way we're going. But when I had the opportunity, I got some compliments that I really opened it up, and I made sure all the voices were heard and the pace was slowed down. And I think that must have been my feminine style of TE. Whenever I can, unless I just don't have an option, I like to make sure all the voices are heard, and I can make people feel like they're accommodated and they're considered in the equation of decision making if we're a group.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I think it is, but I had many situations where I had to come in strong and kind of shift it over to a masculine TE because the moment or the situation called for it. But I found that I was uncomfortable doing that. I could do it very competently. I did it many times, but I felt bad when it was over. I felt like I was a bad person forcing my way upon the system. So
Yeah.
the feminine nature of TE seems to resonate much more with me.
Gotcha. I think when you try to get everyone's opinion on something, when what you were discussing, it sounded like play and it sounded like NT play. So we both share that NT play, and we both have double feminine, double activated NT play. So the figuring out aspect of it's with people and it's feminine. So you're gonna take everyone into consideration. Can you talk about that even in more detail, like the figuring out aspect of things, with people?
Yeah, my NT, my precious NT, right? So it's just a little flavor different than what I thought it was before the shaving, but it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's problem solving, it's brainstorming, it's bringing everybody together in a room and opening things up and putting it back together in a better way, puzzling it out, as you might say, and it's double feminine. So I think I'm very pliable and flexible and reasonable to work with. Again, hearing people's voice. And then, I did some brainstorm training in my NASA days, and we had to do a lot of brainstorming and missions and simulations and just all across because there's always tons and tons of problems and we need solutions. And that feminine NE in general, I think while I'm comfortable with it and I like to explore ideas and NT nerd stuff, sometimes it gets a little much if people get a little carried away with that. So when I heard I was feminine NE, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to think about that. But when I did, and I looked at it across the spectrum of all phases of life, I started to get more comfortable with it because I think I was looking at one snapshot, one context where I was like maybe exhibiting more of a masculinity. But then there's another part to that I've made sense of as well. But yeah, it's double feminine. So it's, I guess I can kind of be accommodating is the word that comes to mind in the problem solving ways.
Right, right. Exactly. You nailed it on the head. Um, I want to ask you about the next part. NF consume. So this one, before the interview, you were asking me to give you supply, give you some reference to research and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, so NF consume. This one is a big one. This is gaining a sense of purpose from new life experience. So that's where you kind of get your energy, motivation, meaning, like say every time you experience something new, you get like a hit of inspiration. It's emotional, it's not logical at all. Can you talk about that? You said you traveled a lot. Maybe you can share some of your experiences and how you felt, every time you have a new experience and whatnot, and when you take that in, how does it make you feel?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so you're asking me to go FI here with you, huh?
That's right,
So
man.
I'm going to show you. Anybody that's ever seen me in any of the OPS stuff knows that I have graphics. So I don't want to disappoint. So this is my baby FI. We're going to go to FI. And so when we're going to talk about that, yeah, consume. I see NF is kind of spiritual, mystical connections, going out there and looking for newness. I put a lot of premium on newness in that feature, what I'm consuming. So I'm leaned into expanding things, right? That's NE, looking all out there, looking all the patterns and possibilities. And then my FI is driving that, right? So that's my values, the things that are important to me. And so the FI is going to steer me oftentimes in consume to people because I love people. I should have been a social psychologist or cultural anthropologist or whatever, right? And I've done a lot of travel like you have. And so my consume tends to be related to what are the ideas and possibilities that other people have. So if I'm in a coffee shop, which I am quite a bit, and I see somebody reading a book, my propensity is my value is, oh, I'm interested in this person. I'd like to know what they're doing. So I'll start exploring that conversation with them to find out what they're dreaming about, what their possibilities are, what's the purpose behind that. And it turns into some really fantastic conversations in general. So NF consume to me is like it's about connection, spirituality, mystical, out there stuff. So when I'm having those conversations, it might not surprise you. A lot of those folks are NFPs, either INFPs or ENFPs, and it's a real magical thing. And I just love to get out there and explore with people. When you travel, that's what you're doing. You're taking in new food. You're taking in new cultures. You're walking around cities around the world, which, like you, I've had the blessing and the opportunity to do. So like Prague, Czech Republic, for instance, it's the city of texture, I call it. You're taking in that newness that you have never been to before, and you're just exploring what possibilities that you and others might have in that experience. So I hope I'm answering your question, but that's what lands for me right now.
Yeah, that's you put it in very clear terms, very SD clear. Um, and the way you described it was good. How you really want to get to know people, really well, and that's NF right there, like getting people's essence essentially. Um, by the way, so Dave and Chan, long time ago, they used to say that ESTJs tend to like wearing tie-dye shirts, like the very hippie NF tie-dye shirts. Did you ever have a phase where you're like wearing a lot of tie-dye shirts and whatnot?
No,
No?
I really don't like tie-dye shirts.
Okay.
But what I will tell you, what someone told me was that my shave, my 512, I think it's 88D, whatever the code is the most hippie of the ESTJs. And so way I lean into that is, I like things that are out there, expansive. I'm into mystical. I'm a spiritual director. I like to explore all kinds of things that are, really out in hippie land. I don't do LSD or shrooms or anything like that, but I've talked to many people who do, and they're really fun to talk to, the shamanic type of a mindset. And so there's a lot of that hippie in me, but it's the idea around more so than it is the wearing the tie dye and playing hacky sack and all that kind of stuff. Although I'll play hacky sack with you.
That's a new thing. I never heard of that. But from now on, if you play hacky sack, you're NF. Okay, you heard it
Well, I
here, guys.
kind of associate that. I'll tell you a quick story from my travels. When I did circumnavigated the globe once, and it was in the middle of the Occupy movement. If you remember that, there was this rebellion against the banking systems around the world. So I ran into a lot of hippies that were protesting outside of international Federal Reserve banks around the world. And one was in Auckland, New Zealand. And I interviewed kind of the leader of that because that's what I do when I travel. I ask questions and I end up interviewing people. It's just part of who I am, right? And so I looked around me at the moment when I was talking to this guy, and there was like frisbees and jugglers and hacky sacks and all that stuff. So it was like a big hippie moment for me, and so that's why I threw hacky sack into the equation there.
Gotcha. Okay. I was like, oh, I never heard that before. Is that what? Didn't know that was a thing, but uh, yeah, it's all good. Good context there. Um, let's go deep now to the last one. This is gonna be the hardest one here. SF sleep. Okay, we both have SF sleep here. Both of us share that. We're both sleep last. There's different dimensions to it, so we're gonna go peel away at all the different dimensions of SF sleep. So if you don't freak out, you'll be fine. Yeah. First part. Yeah, there you go.
Going there again, right?
Yeah. Let's go over the SF part first. So is being cool something you've struggled with in your life? Because it's SF, right? That's like the cool factor. When you were like a teenager or in college or even younger or whatnot, it's like being cool something that you wanted but you just couldn't like quite grasp it. It's like something that you struggled with.
That might not be too far off. I never really was obsessed with cool, although I will tell you one thing. At one point, I got real intrigued with what cool meant. This was about 20 years ago, and I had a mind map thing, and I put the word cool in the middle, and I had about 15 of my friends just draw out all the associations with the word cool. So
Yeah.
I guess I went through a phase where I was kind of concerned about that, and I guess implicit that I was worried whether I was cool or not. I imagine, psychologically speaking.
Yeah.
So I must confess that. But I'm kind of anti-cool, to be honest with you. Like Hollywood and famous people and even politicians that are a little too hip and cool. I kind of lean against that if they're speaking out for something. So I know that might be a little unorthodox, but maybe that has something to do with SF last. I'm not sure. But I don't lean strongly into the whole cool thing for the sake of being cool. I believe in being authentic. And if cool flows from that, all the better. But I won't seek cool for the sake of cool, either in like a product sponsor from somebody who's a cool person in the media or whatever, or just from whatever in life. Uh, so I don't know. Maybe there's something in the psychological realm inside of me there that needs to be pulled out on that. But cool is not something I lean into real strong.
What about popular? Is there a part of you that always wish you were popular?
I was super shy when I was a kid into my probably 20s, early 20s, second, third years in college. I started growing out of that. And I had a very small clique of friends. And within that very small clique, and I was kind of cool in my own way. But I wasn't obsessed with being cool or popular. Um, but as time moves on, we all become popular in our own ways. So I hold my own in many circles in terms of popularity. And at NASA, I was very popular because I led some charity events. I did some rap songs. We called the NASA Nerd Rappers. I became kind of famous in the community here from that kind of stuff. So a lot of social type things. So I became kind of popular through my social activities.
Next question about SF sleep is routines, okay? Because SI is all about routines, right? Like physical routines, and it's with FI, so things that would make you feel good or healthy. All right. So have you struggled with, working out, eating healthy, getting enough sleep, and stress relief? Like those aspects of SF sleep, the health
Well,
aspect of it?
yeah, getting enough sleep and stress relief throughout my years. I'm in my 50s, so I'll have to confess there's been a lot of issues with that and still are. Uh, I got really good intra-body intelligence. I'm in real good shape physically. Rarely get sick. If something's coming on, I perceive it real fast. So, in terms of the taking care of yourself stuff, self stuff, I think I score real high there. But the sleep, getting rest. I think when I sent you my shave, you said, if I'm not info dumb, no one is,
Yeah.
and guilty as charged, right?
Yeah.
So the sleep part of it is an issue. I just don't need a lot of sleep, but I recognize that for healing purposes and health and maintenance and longevity, I need it. So I've done things like since about 2010, really 2013, I started meditating, and that's helped me a lot with my patience. It's helped me a lot with a lot of things. I've also, when COVID started, I started walking every day. I walk at least 5 miles every day, weather permitting. I'm usually sometimes walk 10, and there's a lot of that, that sleep processing that comes from that. And so that helps me a lot, so that when I'm laying my head to go to sleep at 10, 11, 12 o'clock or whatever it is, my mind's already kind of opened it up and dissected stuff and put it back together and dealt with it. So I'm able to get to sleep a little bit better than I used to be. But I still have some room to grow.
Gotcha. Well, when you said you're 50, I was like, wow, you age well because you look like you're in your 40s. So, you look 10 years younger than your actual age. So that you're doing something right.
I appreciate that. My family, the folks I take after, tend to live to be in their late 90s or whatever. So they get the high cheekbones or something. I'm not quite so sure, but thank you.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. I did notice that ESTJs tend to be very good with like the exercise and nutrition part, maybe because of the high SI. So maybe in the other ESTJs that I've interviewed, they've always talked about the emotion part being the hardest. Like when emotion runs through their body, they talk about like freaking out. Like, oh my god, getting overwhelmed with like, what is this thing? Like feelings, right? Emotion. Which is interesting because I'm also sleep last, but the emotional side thing, it doesn't bother me because I have my FI second, even though I'm sleep last, right? So it's the SI stuff that like bothers me, right? Like, the routine and stuff. Like I just can't seem to stick with it, for long periods of time. So it's interesting how the ENFP and ESTJ can be different in that sense, right? But emotions are okay with me. So I want to ask you about emotions and feelings with sleep, and specifically with processing emotions. So when you're feeling like bad, like what do you do when like that negative feeling comes through? Like what's your first how do you react to it, and how do you process it?
Yeah, it's a journey. I could talk about that one for a while. I tell stories from folks from time to time about that. Roughly one time when I was in my 30s, I went to the movies, and my body's kind of numb, from a feelings perspective. My values are high. It's all cerebral though. And so that psychosomatic looping over life just hadn't had enough to light up my body. And so I remember I'm in a movie one time in my 30s, and I'm looking around me and people are crying, and I'm like wondering, how the hell did they do that? I see it's sad, it's emotional, I get it, I empathize cognitively, but I don't feel anything, and I certainly couldn't cry. Uh, as I've moved into my 40s and now my 50s, I have something called midlife FI catch up. And so I'm a mechanical engineer by my undergrad degree, so I'm going to kind of get a little nerdy there with that. Imagine there's this pressure vessel, and the TE and the FI are connected, and I have that axis. And the TE is getting so much pressure and oxygen and energy and attention that it's always running, right? It's lively, it's energetic, things are happening. So the FI is stuck down there in another pressure chamber, and it's kind of sealed off with a valve. And it's there. And at some point in your midlife, you think, it's going to stay there forever. Screw it. I'm good. No, it comes up, and that pressure vessel is going to blow a gasket, and it's going to come and slap you upside the head. And all of a sudden, you're going to be like, what is this wet stuff coming out of my eyes, right? That's a Seinfeld reference right there. And you hope nobody saw you, right? Because you cried and you didn't even know that you could do that, other than when you were a kid and when your sports team lost or you didn't get your way, right? But from teenager on, you never cried. So it's been a journey. I started to lean into it, and I started to say, you know what, I want to be a full human, because being too stoic and too TE-like and too effective and efficient oriented, it gets you so far in life, but then you need to balance yourself out, integrate, work to that alpha state like we're all trying to do, I think, here in the OPS community. And so I started leaning into it a lot and doing what I now know as sleep processing just by instinct, way before I knew that term existed. And I did some exercise. I took some neurobiology classes. I did a lot of meditation. And I actually developed an exercise through this neurobiology class I took to try to light up my insides. because I figured, you know what, if I'm going to be a full human, and I'm not getting this looping from my values in my brain, it's just staying up here. I need some exercises to get that looping going to make up for the times of the past. So I did that with a lot of success. And now a few people that know me well know I'm a softie now. And I can get very sentimental and emotional, whereas before I couldn't. And so it's been a journey, and me leaning into it and recognizing that, just by instinct, that, pushing FI into the box, pushing emotions out of the way will get you so far in life. But then your instincts call on you and say, hey, buddy, do you want to be a full human? And the answer for me was yes. So I've been leaning into it.
It must feel good though, like, tapping into that FI, because it is gives you that sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Human, I guess, is the best word, like you just feel.
That's all I can come up with.
Yeah.
Is I feel more human now. It's a much better situation. Now it comes with a lot of challenges, right? So all of a sudden you're like, you got some emotions flowing through you, and the tidal wave thing is real, and you're like, no, this is not right. I shouldn't be doing this, or this is a super surprise to me, or walking in the woods, and all of a sudden something came to mind that I reflected on. This is SI, and then FI is in the loop now, and those things swirl together, and I'm crying in the woods. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So that was okay because I'm by myself, right? But you don't want to run into an inappropriate situation where that FI is now lighting you up in ways that maybe it shouldn't. So you have to lean into it, but not too strong, and learn how to deal with it. And I guess that's part of what integration is all about: embracing those demons that you hadn't, and bringing them into the family, and the yin yang kind of concept, and learning how to integrate them with your overall self. And so I've been 10, 15 years into that process, and I'm still got a long way to go.
It also makes sense why it was hard for you to cry, when you were younger, because your sleep is double masculine, kind of like mine, so it's like super tough. So I totally I totally relate to your story when you're talking about that. Totally, same thing happened to me. I did remember when I started dating my girlfriend, and we would have like really hard talks, especially during times when we were close to breaking up or even breaking up, that I would be in full tears. And as sad as I felt, it also felt good, because like I felt human, in those moments. So yeah, totally relate with you in that sentiment. And also, when you're talking about like, sometimes maybe you don't want to be crying in the wrong time, because I remember there's one time me and my girlfriend broke up for like a week, and I remember going to like I am in the fitness industry, so I was taking this class called OsteoFit. So it's like teaching people with osteoporosis how to exercise and stuff. And I was crying in class. I'm like trying to cover my face, right? Because like me and my girlfriend had just broken up, and I was like just in tears, and I was like, ah, shit, this is the wrong time to be crying, So I'm trying to hide myself. Luckily, I sat in the back of the class, so no one can see me, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, those real life moments trigger you, right? You might not be ready for it. I could tell you a couple more anecdotes here. I got certified to be what's called an ontological coach at this kind of crazy place in Boulder, Colorado, which is really awesome as well. And they're dancing. I'm there with a bunch of SF and NF types, and there's me, the former NASA guy. And they basically were trying to get emotions to flow. And so in that context, I found myself like being overwhelmed a couple of times. And it's, some things people telling their stories. It's people shared some very intimate problems of their life. And I guess I was just equipped up with my FI, my body, to get triggered. So kind of like you, when you were talking to your girlfriend about some weighty stuff, when the weighty stuff happens and your body's ready, what's that expression? When the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Well, when the body's ready, the emotions will appear.
Yeah.
So to speak, right? And mine was ready for that, and yours was ready for that emotional experience with your girlfriend on a weighty matter.
Yeah, definitely. Nowadays I'm also trying to produce it like on purpose. So I like playing video games. So I purposely play games that have like a very deep emotional storyline, because I want to get hit emotionally. So I would like, get really emotional. Or I'll watch like I don't know if you've seen Toy Story 3 and 4. Oh my god, those were like tear jerkers, which is great. Like I watched it with my girlfriend. I was like, I was like, oh fuck, this is like so sorry to swear. I was like, oh, this is like this hits hard, you know?
Yeah, those movies, Pixar, Disney, all those, they know how to. They've got the folks that are expert in feelings and emotions and
Yeah.
sentimentalities and how they pull that out at you. So those movies sure can do it.
Yeah, it's pure genius, man. That's how I can say it. I'm like, man, this I mean Disney makes the big bucks for a reason, you know? Like they know.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Creatives.
All right. We'll go back to the SF sleep in a bit. I want to change gears a bit. I want to talk about you being info dominant. And you know, we had this chat on Facebook. I'm like, you know, it's like, yeah, you're definitely info dominant. Can't even hide it, you know. And you're ST first. You're like the super info dominant, you know, because not only is your information super accurate, it's like super clear also, you know, with an ST. So can you talk about being info dominant your whole life and what that has been like? And you know, as you got older, realizing that, hey, what's this energy stuff? You know, people like the energy dominance, they like to exchange energy instead of information, you know.
Mm.
So like being goofy and stuff instead of like, oh, let's make sure that the information is accurate, you know. Um, so talk about like when the transition when you started realizing that this other world existed, you know. So let's start with the
You
info
know,
stuff first.
I'm consumed third. I thought I was consumed last, so I don't know the OPS stuff as well as somebody at 6 months in should. So info and energy dominant, I have a very basic understanding of it, I guess I'm strongly drawn to information versus managing my energy, right? And I'm a super curious person. I think that double activated, double feminine NE has something to do with that. And so I'm always looking for new, and I'm always looking for information, and I'm always looking to ground it in reality to make it practical for application and for serving people. And so that's the best I can do with your question. I hope I'm hitting the mark, but you might want to have to help me a little bit there if you want something beyond that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. In terms of energy, Dom, I'm mainly asking about your interactions with individuals who don't want to talk about accuracy of information. Instead, they just want to joke around and have fun.
Oh, okay.
Purely like, you know, like they'll make funny faces at you. They'll tell you a lie on purpose just to get a rise in your feelings, you know.
Yeah,
Like it's
Jack with
purely,
you.
yeah, to mess with you, right? Because it's all about like what's fun, you know, like the fun human interaction, as opposed to,
Gotcha.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's definitely that. They'll see how serious you are and how oriented you are to getting the job done, or too focused, too OI narrowed down,
Yeah.
and they'll jack with you to just, be more like us, man. Be a little bit more carefree, that kind of stuff. Is that what you're referring to? I've had that happen to me a few times.
Oh yeah, and how did you react when that happened?
You know, I don't get offended. I let stuff roll off of me pretty easily. But if it was like a serious, like I can remember back in the space program days, leading some projects, and we had brainstorming. We had a lot of ENFP and ENTPs on this brainstorming team, and they saw how serious I was about conducting the meeting, and they threw a lot of distractions at me on purpose just to jack with me, and I guess I got a little tense in one moment on that. But generally speaking, I said I knew what they were doing, and I tried to balance things out and take that as a hint that maybe I need to lighten up a little bit in the moment.
The next thing I want to ask you about is your IP swing. So EJs and IPs are the same. Just depends where you are in your swing. So EJ is essentially someone that kills themselves for other people to serve the tribe, essentially. And IP is the
Yeah.
opposite. It's like about serving self. So it's more selfish, right? So EJs do swing to IP and they become the super selfish person. They want to be the person that gets the recognition. They want to be the hero of the story, you know. Can you talk about when that has happened to you? You're like, you know what? I'm fed up with being like the lackey. You know, I want to be like the top guy now. And maybe it only happened for a brief moment, but can you talk about that?
Yeah, I understand the discussion, all that stuff. I maybe I'm just naive or not self-aware enough to see that swinging happening a lot, but I'm sure it's happening. The way I can respond to that is that we're looking for those validation cookies. We're getting our identity and our fulfillment from satisfying the tribe, so to speak, and serving folks, and then that serving of folks is kind of feeding our egos, and that engine keeps running, right? So that appeases us to a certain extent. But then kind of like that FI catch up in terms of emotions and feelings, at some point, you know, you want to make sure I think your phrase is leaning your ladder against the right building or whatever. You
Right.
want to make sure that you introspect and you figure out, what's your Superman code behind your cape, and you want to show it to the world and give yourself permission to inspect and own who you are, irrespective of whether the tribe likes or not. So, yeah, that swing, I'm sure it's happened a few times. The way I think I've managed it, if this fits into the question or not, is like, for instance, when I first started coaching, I'm a coach and a consultant. I got to the point where I needed glasses. I don't know where here they are. So these are the ones I have. These are my Matthew McConaughey glasses, right? And so I had about 3 or 4 pairs. And so I would like ask all my coaching friends, which one should I wear? Which one makes me more look like a coach? And they all looked like me like I was a freak, because a lot of these people are INFPs, right? And they're like, well, you tell me, which one do you want? And I'm like, no, you tell me which one you think fits better. So I think that's kind of a dip in the toes, a toes in the water, a little bit of what you're talking about there, where I didn't feel like I had the right to do what I wanted to do. I needed to get tribal validation or verification or do a survey or whatever. Same thing when I came up with my company logo. I'm on social media. I'm like, here's 3 or 4 options. What do you guys think? And I think an IP would say, I like this one. If you don't like it, that's your problem. And so I can't really think of any examples where I've kind of like really swung and said to hell with everybody. I think what I've done was I've introspected, and then I've tried to balance both the masculine FI preferences that I have with the tribal validation and their opinion, and I tried to make those work in a way that appeased both.
Gotcha, man. All right. I think it probably has happened to you. I think you were probably just not aware when it did, you know. So
I believe you. Or maybe I'm just not right now coming up with an antidote or memory that falls in that line.
Yeah, possibly. It's hard to say. All right, dude. We're gonna wrap up the interview soon. I have 2 final questions for you, and then we'll wrap it up. All right.
All right.
All right. So, the first one is I want you to talk about being a decider. You know, having people problems and stuff. You know, maybe it's not so bad right now because you're in your 50s already, but maybe it was quite bad when you were younger. Can you talk about that a little bit? And like, you know, like part of the deal with EJs is, the blame game. You know, when something bad happens, you know, you tend to point fingers at someone else instead of taking self-responsibility. Obviously, as you get older, you start realizing that that's wrong. But you know, maybe share a story when you realize like, oh man, I'm doing this stuff. You know, I'm better cut it out. You know, that takes self-responsibility. Can you talk about that a bit? Being like the people problem stuff first.
I kind of view it as I hear the terminology, and to me, I'm more comfortable saying people opportunities more than people problems.
Okay.
You know, when I see somebody that's quote unquote in my assessment not doing what maybe they should do, and it's causing the team or the group to run into some wrinkles or some problems that they shouldn't, you know, we could put the label problem on it, and we could pursue it that way. But I kind of like to put the label opportunities on it. And so, but I can see what you're saying though in the past, where I think what happens to us is when we're forced to deal with our demons, or we're under a lot of pressure and stress, our ego naturally wants to kind of cast blame on other people. So I think that's more of a human thing. It may be an EJ thing more than I realize, but I'm sure I'm guilty of it. I can't think of any examples, but across the board, it's like I'm bothered with people not being responsible. I'm bothered with people not delivering stuff on time, because I was responsible for this large logistical process in the space shuttle program. And so I had some moments that I can think about where like, dadgummit, that guy again. He did it again. He held the whole team up. And so I'm blaming the person. And there was some truth there, but there was also a little bit of me looking to maybe cast the blame somewhere besides myself at the same time, I believe. So that's the best I can do. Again, maybe I'm just not coming up with antidotes for you tonight, am I?
It's okay, man. It's okay. It's okay. Well, you're lead sensory, so it's okay. You know, you're more like specific as opposed to analogies, right? So, yeah. Don't sweat it, dude. All right. To wrap up the interview, I want you to talk about you being audio kinesthetic, so you're MF. So talk about like being good with sound and music, and then also with doing stuff with your hand and body, being kinesthetic, could be sports, could be working out, whatever it is for you. Okay, so let's start with the audio first.
Okay. Yeah. Before I do that, I'm gonna say I thought I was FF because I thought I was tester and visual because I could see a lot in my mind's eye. But the more I thought about it, the audio and the kinesthetic seems to be a better match. So I think they got me right. I didn't accept it at first, but I do now. I've given out as a coach a lot of assessments. I give one called the Berkman. And I remember the first time I took this assessment, it lists all these core under the hood type of qualities. And you're talking about a mechanical engineer who was working at NASA at the time and he was considering a career change. And the very first top two ones were musical, literary, and artistic. And I was like, WTF, man, this assessment's bonkers. But then I've gone on to learn it and then to recognize that there's a rhythm and a musicality. I did play the trombone. It's right over here on the side of me. I can pull it up and show you, actually. It's right here. There's my trombone. I've got my ukulele. I'm learning over here too.
Yeah.
I love art. I'm no good at it, but I like dabbling with abstract art. And I'm progressively more literary. So that assessment actually had me right. It's just I had never come up for air and embraced those things because I was so busy achieving. I'm an Enneagram 3 wing 2, right? So it's like, EXTJ plus the 3. You're too busy doing stuff to really explore all these other stuff to really get to know yourself. But now I've had opportunities to do that. So the audio, I love listening to people give speeches. I tend to learn good by talking and listening, more so than anything else. So I think the MF makes a lot of sense. The kinesthetic, I'm not really good with fine motor skills, but the medium motor skills and the big muscles, athleticism, and things of that nature, outdoors, physicality. I mentioned a lot of people tried to shade me to 32. A lot of people thought I was SE. I thought I was SE. And the kinesthetic comes natural to me. I'm really inclined to motion, movement, physicality, and those things. So the kinesthetic makes sense too, but it's going to be the medium and the big muscles versus the fine motor stuff.
Gotcha. When you realize that, okay, so you took the test, said that you were good at music, and you're like, what the hell? And then you started playing like your instruments and stuff. You're like, oh my God.
Well, it didn't quite happen that way. I had played music all along, but when I took the assessment, it was like 10 years ago. When it said my top two things were musical, artistic, and literary, I'm like, I was like shocked until I learned the system because somebody gave me that assessment. And then I learned it enough and I went and actually get certified in that system. And so what I'm saying is that it kind of explained myself to me in a way that made a lot of sense. And so the audio to me also took this organization called Johnson O'Connor. They give like aptitude tests and stuff. And I took this assessment one time and I scored like perfect on audio and pitch and everything. And so that speaks to it as well. So there's this audio processing orientation of myself that apparently comes out in my videos or something. I don't fully understand it, but I can say that I see why that is the case to some extent.
Well, it's cool to know that that's one of your superpowers, So,
I guess
take it. Yeah, I guess. All right, cool. So we'll wrap up the interview here, Brian. So, thanks for coming out and sharing more about yourself and revealing your baby FI to the world. I think that a lot of people would appreciate that.
Well, I shot at it right
there you go, man. There you got your poster.
It's growing though. It's I'm diving into it. I'm leaning into it, and I'm recognizing I need a lot more work there. But it's still baby.
I did notice that people with EJs with FI at the bottom seems to have an easier time with the FI at the bottom than the TI at the bottom. I don't know why. Like it seems like the ENFJs and ESFJ seems to have a harder time tapping into that fourth function than the ENTJ and the ESTJ. It's weird.
I would only offer that life tends to try to round you out in humanity more than it is in logic and technical. But I could be wrong on that. that might be a theory to explore, because
Yeah.
you live long enough, and that emotionality, that human condition, it's coming to call for you. And it
You're
did
right.
me, and it anybody out there is in their 20s and 30s who think they're gonna we're gonna keep that pressure vessel isolated. I got news for you. It's not happening that way.
Right.
You're gonna get slapped upside the face as well.
That's a good theory. Yeah, that makes sense. At the end of the day, yeah, you do want to be in touch with the human side more, right? So yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right, Brian, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you around the group.
Thank you. Bye-bye.